Welcome to another edition of HBCU Sports Live. I'm Kendrick Marshall. That's Chris Stevens. Below me is Jared Hoffman. He got his game face on tonight. Post NBA All-Star game that many people thought was a tragedy. And we're going to start the show with that. I know, like people saying, we're going to start the NBA when a whole bunch of black-collar sports going on. Well, we'll get to all that in a moment. But the guys in the pre-show meeting very passionate about the NBA All-Star game, and apparently last night jumped the shark. 200 points were scored by the East in a win. They shot 97 three-pointers, many of them from half court by Damian Lillard. So, fellas, all night last night and all day today, people were saying, how can we fix the NBA All-Star game? So, Jared, Chris, as the basketball aficionados, how do we help out Adam Silver?
Well, I don't know how much help you can give them because you've got to make these guys care, number one. And if you watched any of that All-Star game last night, I watched, bits and pieces of it because I was doing other things around my home. But I've been, again, as I age myself routinely on this program, I started watching NBA All-Star Saturday in 1990. This was when it was in Miami. This is when Dominique won the dunk contest. Craig Hodges won the three-point shootout, the first three in a row for him. And Magic Johnson won the All-Star Game MVP. So I've been watching this a long time. And this was the most disinterested I've been in an entire All-Star weekend the entire time I've been watching this. Everything about it was bad. From Micah Parsons jacking up 31 shots in a celebrity game. Why are you as a football player taking 31 shots in any basketball game? Then when you talk about the three, the only good thing about it was the three-point shootout and the Sabrina versus Steph thing, which Kenny Smith ruined with his misogyny. So, and then you add to the fact that I've been watching this basketball thing all my life. 200 points should not be scored in a basketball game ever. I don't care. It's not normal. It's not natural. It's egregious. And the only way Adam Silver can fix it is if he really starts making these dudes give a damn about it. And right now, I just don't see anybody that does.
Jared Hoffman.
That All-Star game was atrocious. It was atrocious. Yeah, along the lines of what Chris said, unless these guys care about the game, it's not going to be interesting. Everybody talking about, oh, they need to pay the winning team $1 million. They already playing for charity. Wasn't that supposed to be the incentive? Ain't that what they added to the All-Star game? They started playing for they done changed formats. They went to the team captains, picked their own teams. They went away from the East-West. And then when God rest his soul, Kobe passed away, they introduced you got to reach 24 points in the fourth quarter to win the game and all this stuff to try to fix it. They've done all they can. It's not going to be interesting. Like, the only thing I could think of, and I was thinking about this on Saturday when I was watching Saturday night, I agree with Chris. The only thing that was exciting was Sabrina versus Steph, honestly, and the three-point shootout. But the one thing I would say is I would add a 2-on-2 tournament and have NBA players partner up with WNBA player, and they have a 2-on-2 tournament, kind of like a king/queen of the court type thing. That's the only thing I can think of, because like the slam dunk contest, you're not going to get the biggest stars to be in it. And NBA players ain't got enough time to be practicing these insane dunks that these YouTube dunkers do. So it's not going to be you're going to have to go to the G League and get guys like Mac McClung, or get guys on two-way contracts trying to build up their name and build up their brand as a dunker to get them to do the competition. And yeah, the skills competition, as competitive as it is, it's not interesting. So yeah, this was not a good All-Star weekend, to be honest. Hope they had fun though.
Only thing I'll say about this wrap of the topic is I don't get the outrage over the game itself being not real basketball, because it's promoted as not being real basketball. Like, the entire weekend is to celebrate the game and the city, but not the All-Star game itself. You got players going to parties. You got players going to different events. You got a celebrity game. You got the skills competition. You got the Indiana Pacers shooting from half court to try to beat the first round draft picks. I mean, like, the whole thing is set up to not be something we should that serious about. That's what so many people saying, well, I'm not going to watch NBA again. But the Pro Bowl is a flag football game, and 300,000 million people watched the Super Bowl last week. I mean, like, NBA All-Star Game is what it is. The only way to make the players care is probably for money purposes, like instant tournament. Other than that, like, you got to accept the game for what it is. It's an entertainment. The players, they're not going to play like it's Game 7 in the NBA Finals when they should. It's all about putting on a good show. And I think those get the dunks and the three-pointers, though some of them were ridiculous. Like, Luka Doncic shooting the three-pointer from well beyond half court, off the scoreboard was ridiculous. Other than that, I think the game itself is what it is, man. Like, it's never going to change because the players really don't have any incentive to play when they should. This whole thing about maybe the All-Star games to put the NBA Finals home for their games on the line, that's stupid. Baseball tried that, it was stupid thing. You can't have, like, Scotty Barnes with Toronto Raptors deciding what conference hosts the NBA Finals in 2024. No, but to me, the outrage is a lot of performative stuff on Twitter and on social media. Like, basketball will survive, NBA will survive. It's just one night a week where you can give a pass that guys really don't want to play hard for 2 hours. But that's my thoughts on the whole thing. I think the whole conversation is pretty messy. Moving on to, like, why you came here for us. Today was the HBCU Combine out in Louisiana at the Saints facility. 40 draft-eligible players all worked out in front of 70 NFL and CFL scouts on hand down in New Orleans. Had of the Legacy Bowl. It's going to happen on Saturday. And we were all kind of, like, in our own way following along with it. I know Jared Hoffman wrote a roundup of kind of what happened on our website and some of the players who stood out. Some very impressive, 40-yard dash times, some very impressive workout drills from a lot of different players. So, Jared, you followed this closely for much of the afternoon. Which players kind of stood out to you?
Well, you got the usual suspects: Davius Richard, Jarvin Howard, John Huggins, who, although the casual HBCU football fan may not know who John Huggins is, but if you're in the know of HBCU football, you know that John Huggins has been garnering interest from pro teams for a long time now. So him, Jarvin Howard, Davius Richard, but somebody that was lesser known that kind of put his name into some draft boards potentially is I'm sorry, RJ Mobley. I was about to say something completely wrong. I wanted to get his name right. RJ Mobley. He is a receiver out of Winston-Salem State. If you know anything about receivers out of Winston-Salem State in their history in the NFL, Yancey Thigpen, he can be in that mold. He's a guy that has the size to be an NFL wide receiver. He's 6'3", about 211, 210, something like that. Ran a very good 40. I think he was about in the 4.4s, if I'm not mistaken. Was great in the hands drill. And the receivers, there was only 6 receivers, but they all stood out. Tamon Cook out of North Carolina A&T was primarily a return specialist, but made an argument that he could be a receiver at the next level, if not in the CFL or the UFL, maybe on an NFL practice squad. He did great in the hands drill. Terrell Gardner had an incredible hands drill. Had 3 off-balance catches and ended it off with a one-hander. He had a great performance. Like you said, a lot of great 40 times. He had a 4.3, close to a sub 4.3 in a 40 by a Florida A&M player. His name escapes me right now, but we had some very good 40 times, a lot of great speed, a lot of great athleticism show. Looper Danellis is somebody as well. He weighs 280, but he does not move like it. He's 5'11", 280, but he does not move like it. I see why he had 10 sacks and 18 tackles for loss in the last 2 seasons with Benedict. I knew he was great, but I didn't know with that body how that he was able to do all that. That was so. That's just a couple of players that stood out to me.
Yeah, Chris. Which players you think stood out to you today? I know Talked about Davis Richard, who's going to be high on a lot of teams' lists, but kind of what guys kind of stood out for you?
I have to piggyback off of Jared, and Luber Danellis is someone that I've watched a little bit closely because I watched a lot of Benedict this past season. And the name that comes to mind, if you're a Philadelphia Eagles fan of a certain vintage, you'll remember a gentleman by the name of Hollis Thomas, who was about Danellis' height, about 5'11", 6 foot, probably a little bigger at about 305, 310. But Hollis made a pretty good career for himself as a quick dude in the three technique that can, muck up a run game or get to the quarterback when necessary. If a team really is looking for a guy that can, get between the center and the guard and make things difficult for the run game, or make a quarterback get the throw off quicker than he would like to, then I feel like Luber Danellis is your guy.
Yeah, that player who ran a 4.3 at the combine today was Eric Smith for FAMU. That team got a lot of speed, man, and it kind of showed in the way they played this season, winning the Celebration Bowl and the SWAC championship. So yeah, like he's definitely going to get some more eyeballs on him for sure. Running a sub 4.3, like a guy that's small, under 6 feet, you got to show some speed, some quickness, and he definitely did that on this afternoon too. I'm gonna play a clip in a lengthy interview that Jared did last week with draft HBCU players scout Gerald Huggins talking about Davis Richard. He was the one quarterback I think on the day that kind of a lot of scouts wanted to see. He's got a prototypical NFL size, 6'3", I think like over 220 pounds, big strong arm guy. And a lot of scouts were really wanting to see how he would do. So I'm going to play this clip from Gerald Huggins, just letting you guys know how other teams feel about him.
It was growing pains, but he eventually settled in. So that's what you really want to see. He settled in, and then he was pretty well on his last day. He didn't get as many reps as I would like during the game. However, if he's just able to go to the Legacy Bowl and just showcase that he is the best offensive player in HBCU football, which pretty much he has been the past 2 years, then and let me tell you, people are very interested in Davis Richard. And this goes all the way up to the top. Everybody knows who Davis Richard is. He had a ton of interviews when he was at Hula Bowl. There are people that are behind him, and I think he's one that he will be brought into camp as someone like, hey, can we potentially work around this kid's ability to be able to be a good decision maker with the ball in his hand as a runner and a passer? I just think, the offense he was in is not exactly the pro style, but at the end of the day, you build a system around the quarterbacks that you have. And I just think that if you're able to build a system around him that works and fits for him, he should be able to thrive. And guess what? If he's a career backup in the NFL, there's a lot of guys that do that and make millions of dollars, and they are very well off. But of course, I know he wants to play. But hey, the goal is to get on the roster. So the Legacy Bowl for him, he just needs to blow it out the water. He can't look like, I don't want to be taken wrong, but he can't look like everybody else. He has to look like the dominant player that we know he is and know.
All right, fellas. I know, Jared, you interviewed Gerald for that one. What do you take away from his comments, and kind of like, did those comments kind of match up from what you saw from Richard today?
Well, if you saw the interview that Davis Richard did on NFL Network with Steve Weish, who was a Howard alum, he talked about, wanting to show the different variations that he could play in, as he put it, the pro style offense. For those who don't know what a pro style offense, what the term is basically taking the ball from under center as opposed to taking it out of shotgun. So that'll be like the formation or a single back formation, but it's basically taking the ball from under center, where a lot of college offenses, they run shotgun formations. You know what I mean? So he talked about, talking to scouts and saying, and them telling him like they want to see, you're able to throw in various progressions, do your 5-step drop back or 3-step drop back and complete the pass to the receiver in stride, and things that you being able to throw these different types of throws that they look for quarterbacks to make. And he talked so that aligns perfectly with what Gerald Huggins was talking about. And you look at the quarterbacks in today's game, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, and all these players who are two-way quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes, not saying that Davis Richard could be that guy, be like those guys, but you look at them and they're able to play different positions, and they're not different positions. They're able to play in different styles of offenses, and they're able to manipulate the offense in different ways. That's what you're looking for, not just as at the starter, but as a backup. You know what I mean? And I think that he took that in stride, and he listened, and he put that into his performance into the HBCU Combine, and we're going to see him do that in the HBCU Legacy Bowl. And I think with a good performance, he could have a lot more teams hitting him up on his line.
Yeah, Chris, you live and work right in the middle of MEAC country, and I know you've seen a lot of Davis Richard over the years at North Carolina Central. How big of a combine is this for him to be drafted? I know the Chicago Bears, my team, met with him recently to discuss some things ahead of the draft. But what do you think his NFL prospects are?
Well, I have a Davis Richards story actually, and this goes back to homecoming 2022 at Delaware State University. The Hornets were actually up 2 touchdowns with about, I'll say 10, 11 minutes left. And I just kind of looked around the press box and said, he's gonna get these back, because just watching his confidence, just watching the way he moved, and the way that Davis Richard, everybody on the North Carolina Central team looked to him to do it, because they literally Trey Albert literally put the ball in his hands about 30, 40 times over the last 4 years and said, go get this done. And he's gotten it done every single time. Sure enough, North Carolina Central came back and won that game. So just watching him lead those 3 touchdown drives in the last 10 minutes is like, this is a bad brother here, man. Like, I just don't see a reason why he shouldn't be on an NFL active roster. I'm not saying not the practice squad, not the taxi squad, not the people that you call off the street. He should be on an NFL roster to start the 2024 season. He's a big kid. Like, my comp for him, right down to the jersey number 11, is Dante Culpepper. Real big kid, strong arm, can run, just not somebody that you want to, come down that dark alley with, in terms of when he decides to tuck that thing and run. So I feel like Davis Richard is a young man that absolutely deserves a shot in the NFL. And whether it be with Kendrick Marshall's Bears, whether it be with the Cleveland Browns, who's still trying to remove the stink from the Deshaun Watson situation, whatever NFL team ends up with Davis Richard, I feel like it's going to have a diamond in the rough.
Yeah, from your lips to God's ears on that Chicago Bears one, man. Like, I know everybody in Chicago love Tyson Bagent, undrafted Division II quarterback. But from what I've seen, Richard is better than that guy. He could be on the Bears roster right now. But we'll see, though. We'll see. So I know last year only one Black college player was drafted. That was in the 7th round. Others obviously signed free agent contracts. Like, just handicapping the guys. Like, how many players do you think will get drafted this year based on what we all know and what we've seen so far, starting with Jared?
So if we're being realistic, see, I asked Gerald Huggins this question when we did our interview, and he was stumped, and I'm stumped too, because realistically, I could say realistically that there is 3 guys that I can realistically say could potentially hear their name called on draft night. Sundiata Anderson is one. John Huggins is another one. And a dark horse guy that I think could potentially hear his name called is Marcus Riley. And I'm not confident that Marcus Riley will hear his name called, but I think with a great performance in the HBCU Legacy Bowl, he's a guy that could potentially creep his way onto some draft boards, because he's a guy that could be a receiving threat. But the most important thing is he is a guy that performs on special teams. He's a guy that performs on special teams, which is another person that I forgot to mention, Brandon Codrington, who if you watch the live broadcast of the HBCU Combine, Bucky Brooks could not stop pleading and begging him to do some receiver drills. He was so fascinated by him and his physical playing style and his ball and his ability with his hands. You know what I mean? So I think the versatile players, guys who could play different positions. I think Sundiata Anderson is somebody who is great off the edge, but if you wanted to plug him in at linebacker, he could do that too. Brandon Codrington is a guy that you could put on the slot receiver, or you could put him on the deep ball receiver, and I think he can cover well, and I think he could be a return specialist. Same thing with Marcus Riley. I think you could put Marcus Riley in the slot on an NFL offense, or you could put him on the special teams, and he could be a return threat. And John Huggins is a guy who has great size, and he could be a cover corner. And so if I'm being realistic, three and a possible for all my spades players. I think for all my spades players, but I'm not confident that I can't confidently say that we will have 3 or 4 players drafted. But if I were to venture a guess, I would say possibly 3.
All right, Chris, what say you?
Well, I had the privilege of talking to Steve Weiss last year for a story we did for HBCU Sports leading, actually after the draft, talking about, why we didn't have, any HBCU players go until the 7th round. It was just one kid. But honestly, I just don't, I like Jared's 3 and a possible analogy, but I just feel like it's going to be another one of those years where the kids that, have run out of eligibility at the Power Fives or even at the FCS level, like, they'll creep their way on their draft board just because the name of their school is bigger. And that's something HBCUs have been fighting since the very beginning of desegregation, because when you take into account that Jackson State has more Hall of Famers than just about 95% of the Power Fives that you can name, and then now you have kids fighting to be drafted from SWAC schools, MEAC schools, CIAA schools, SIAC schools, we've lost the plot, and it's very disappointing. So our decision makers in those rooms that they're going to give HBCU kids a fair shot. So I'll say 2.
Yeah, you don't look very confident in that, Chris.
Let me just say this real quick. Could and will are 2 different things. Just say that. Could and will are 2 different things.
Yeah, I saw,
I'm not even sure about that too, honestly.
Like from what I saw from the Combine today, I saw a lot of undersized guys, like at linebacker, like at wide receiver, like at defensive back, and they were running some pretty high times, like 4.7, 4.8, 4.9 times like that. I'm like, it's going to be like really, really difficult for those guys to get drafted, despite the fact there are really good players in college. Like making a jump from a small school to the NFL and sticking on the roster and then like make an impact is like a tremendous gulf. Joshua Williams was able to do it. He played for the 2-time Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. Congrats to him. He was able to make the transition. You see some guys like Armstead and Hargrave and Shaquille Leonard, all those guys, they were able to make their jump because they were like freak athletes to begin with. They see the opportunity. And for the most part, I think a lot of guys we saw today and we'll see at the Legacy Bowl this weekend are going to fall in that category where this will be their last hurrah for college football or football in general. Some guys may go to UFL, some guys might play overseas, some guys might go to Canada, but as far as NFL, it's probably going to be a repeat of the same thing. I know the kid offensive lineman out of Howard, he's probably definitely going to get drafted because of his size, and teams will want to work with a guy who can play like both tackle positions and just, protect the quarterback in that way. I think Richard is probably another guy who possibly could get drafted, maybe in the later rounds. But you got this class isn't as strong as the class that got drafted 2 years ago. I think it was like 4 guys who got drafted 2 years ago. I don't think this class is as strong, so we may not see huge numbers coming out of the NFL draft this year. So,
Well,
sorry to say that.
I will say this though, UFL, there's gonna be a lot of guys that are on UFL rosters. I know for a fact Lubert Denellis is going to be on. If he's not on a NFL training camp roster, he will be in the UFL. If John Huggins is not on the NFL roster, he will be in the UFL. If Jarvian Howard somehow doesn't get drafted or isn't on a training camp roster or on a practice squad, he will be in the UFL. I'm very confident that we will see at least 10 guys on UFL rosters. I can confidently say that because we got some guys that, although they're undersized, they have the intangibles. They have the skills to play at the professional level. The NFL may not be in their future, but they definitely have what it takes to be on the UFL or CFL roster.
Yeah, I think you're right about Huggins. Number one, he was a transfer from Florida. Came to JSU, was part of a really strong secondary for the Tigers. They led the FCS in interceptions. And Steve Weiss on the broadcast today said, like, pretty much the majority of the scouts were there to see him today.
Yeah,
and he put on the show. Right. Yeah, he put on the show. He ran a really good 40 time. 4.4 was I think like kind of his baseline 40 time. He did a lot of good things in skill drills too. That kid definitely could be like a second day a draft pick too. So there are some diamonds in the rough, but I don't think people should get their expectations up that it's going to be like 4, 5, 6, 7 guys who get drafted this year. And speaking of that, what do you guys think needs to be done to try to help, other than I guess recruit better players to black colleges, get the guys who are already at black colleges in position to improve their draft stocks? Starting with Chris.
Well, you have to have the voices in the room, honestly, and we've all there. I mean, it's been years now since. I mean, I don't know how long the Rooney Rule has been in place, but I think we need to stop looking at that as some landmark legislation and honestly just look at it as, I guess, a way to quiet the voices of people who have called out racism and the good old boy network in professional sports. I mean, yes, it's a nice thing. You have to interview at least one minority candidate. But how many people are just like that token interview? Like the Commanders literally pulled this whole sham of going to Detroit to interview. I don't want to say Dre Bly. I can't remember who. Aaron Glenn. going to Detroit to interview Aaron Glenn, and ended up picking Dan Campbell anyway. Why you're picking the defensive coordinator of a team that gave up 45 points in a home playoff game is beyond me. That's another story. But you have to have the voices in the room. You have to have like Doug Williams, or even down to Shaq Harris, who was a black quarterback. Of course, a black quarterback. Of course, he's a quarterback. He's black. He went to Grambling. Him and Charlie Joyner were great in the late 60s. But yeah, Shaq Harris was not only a quarterback for 13 seasons in the NFL, but he was a player personnel director for the Jacksonville Jaguars for years. You need people like Shaq Harris not to be in not just being the minority in the room. You need to have more people like that in who HBCU folks, going to, personnel positions to be able to say, okay, we need to take more looks at kids at HBCUs because you will find plenty of talent there. That's where it has to start.
Yeah, Jared, what do you think? As someone who follows this stuff kind of close, how do you think that gap can be bridged to get more guys in the league?
Well, I think we could get more retired pro talent on these coaching staffs, or if not on the coaching staff, to be consultants to these players. If you look at the main areas where HBCUs are, where all of our talent is, Texas, you got Louisiana, we got Florida, we got Maryland, we got Pennsylvania, we got all these places where NFL teams are. Why can't we get, former or current NFL players to work out with our HBCU guys? Why can't we get these HBCU guys at these pro camps and to learn under guys who are formerly or currently in the league. We have Ray Lewis who and Ed. I know all the stuff that we say about Ed Reed, but he wants to be a part of the development of the players coming up. Have them do some workouts with the guys to teach them about playing the safety position. One thing you can't say about Ray Lewis or Ed Reed, you can't say that they don't have knowledge of the game, because they do. You see, the videos of them talking about how they watch film and how they prepare for games. Our HBCU guys can benefit from that. We got Jameis Winston, who is a contributor to the HBCU Legacy Bowl. Have him, mentor our young quarterbacks who are coming up. Have him mentor Jeremy Musa. Have him mentor Davius Richard, Donovan Reddick, and all of our guys who are coming up in the NFL draft. You had Ricky Williams, who said that he would only coach at a HBCU. So have him work out with all of our running backs who are draft eligible. You know what I mean? I think that would be the biggest thing. Have them learn from guys who have been through the wars. Have them learn from the guys who know what it's like to prepare for an NFL game. In some cases, know what it's like to prepare for the biggest game that you could possibly play in the NFL, in the Super Bowl. And it doesn't have to just be NFL players that they can learn from. Learn from guys who have played in the CFL. Learn from the guys who have played in the UFL. We have plenty of HBCU guys who have played in the CFL and the UFL. How about have those guys come back and mentor our guys who are playing now, and to help bridge that gap, to learn about what it's like to make it to the next level and to have success at the next level. I know we got, former NFL talent on our coaching staffs. We got Eddie Robinson, who's with Alabama State. We got Eddie George, who's with Tennessee State. We had Hugh Jackson, who was with Grambling State. Whether you want to talk about his record in the NFL or not, you can't deny that it's not easy making it as an assistant or head coach at the NFL level. So we got to get more guys who know what it's like to prepare at the pro level to mentor our guys to help bridge that gap, and like Chris said, to have that influence inside these NFL locker rooms and in the front offices. Look at the Detroit Lions. They have their GM went to I forget which HBCU, but I know he went to an HBCU. So, and that's primarily the reason why James Houston is where he is. And that's why that team is thriving now, because he has had that influence. And the New Orleans, if you look at the New Orleans Saints, they have been a huge contributor to promoting the HBCU Legacy Bowl. I know they're a partner, but still, they have done a great job promoting the HBCU Legacy Bowl and broadcasting it and making sure that their fan base knows about it, and they're getting their team excited about it and looking to see who could potentially be one of the next stars on their roster. So I think more influence of former and current pro stars would go a long way to helping our HBCU guys bridge the gap.
I think your points, both you, Chris and Jared, are well taken. And I was thinking about it when you guys were talking, like, yeah, it's good to, like, if we can get some more mentorship for guys, like, after they declare for the draft, to prepare for these workouts and try to get their numbers up. But for me and my money, it kind of starts, like, while they're in school. Like, what resources do they have in school to get better, to get better 40 times, to be much stronger? I mean, they can't be any taller. They can't control that, but, like, how's the training table? How's their nutrition? Are they getting, like, proper workouts? Like, do they have, like, everything that they possibly need to better themselves as college players, and then if they want to make transition to the NFL, do that too? And, like, speaking like a bunch of scouts, that's, like, the one thing they said, like, black colleges, like, they like that component of having enough resources to able to prepare those guys while they're in school to be NFL draft ready. And I think, like, while we can say, well, we need a pro coach to go in there and teach them all these drills and kind of coach them up, that's one thing. But, like, they can't overcome that other stuff. It only comes with, like, 4 years or 5 years of development over time. And doing it, like, over just one offseason might not be enough to get those guys the shots that they probably think they deserve. But moving on, we're right in the thick of conference play. and coming down the stretch, a lot of hotly contested races for conference championships. And I know, Chris, today you wrote heavily on the MEAC and how both the men and the women's races are kind of shaping up. I know Norfolk State on the women's side seems to be the clear favorite to go about and to win that conference. But are there any contenders on that side who can possibly give Norfolk State any scares coming down the stretch here?
I'm not ready to dismiss Howard yet. Yes, they're missing Destiny Howell. Destiny Howell, if you didn't know, was the MEAC preseason player of the year. She tore her ACL, unfortunately, in preseason, and that pretty much, was a buzzkill for Howard. But right now, they're only a game and a half behind Norfolk State, who played North Carolina Central earlier today. We'll have to check the results of that a little later on. But I think Howard still has a chance because Ty Grace is a coach who's just going to demand the best from her players. Their leading scorer right now is a freshman, Tiana Walker. She's averaging about 12 points a game. And when you have a young kid fresh out of high school who understands that she has to be the one to lead this team in the absence of their leader, that goes a long way towards, getting your team ready for the MEAC tournament. And Terrence Braxton at North Carolina Central deserves a ton of credit because North Carolina Central fired their coach like 2 weeks before practice started. He just happened to be the assistant coach that got elevated to the interim head coach's box. And lo and behold, that team is 12-10 and 6-2 in the conference right now. And he said that he said he believed in line changes like in hockey. Like there were going to be 5 substitutions at a time and his girls had to be ready. And so far they've been ready. So, but Norfolk State, is still the cream of the crop by far. You've got Kiara Wheeler, who's averaging 18 and 10, who's probably going to garner plenty of votes for MEAC Player of the Year. Same for Diamond Johnson, who has been every bit as good as advertised, averaging 21, 6 and 3. There's just, I don't know what else Norfolk State has to do to prove that they are a team that should be off that 14, 15, 16 line. Like they absolutely should be a 13 seed. There's no doubt in my mind that they should be a 13 seed. Anything else would be an injustice.
Yeah, they've been killing people throughout the entire season, especially after they got Diamond Johnson. They just been like the clear best team in the conference. But Jared, what say you about the MEAC? Is it just Norfolk State to win?
And don't forget, they was doing that to people before Diamond was eligible. Yeah. She missed the first 11 games, and they had a winning record in that span, and they have not stopped since then. Howard did beat them without Destiny Howell in the lineup, so that is something to make note of. Howard had the recipe for beating Norfolk State, but Norfolk State has just gotten better since that game. Think about this. Diamond Johnson had 26 against South Carolina State. Kiara Wheeler had 26 against South Carolina State. Combine those two, their two scores against South Carolina State's 25. Them two alone beat South Carolina State 52-25. Them two alone. Now, look, South Carolina State is no contender, so it's not going to have much bearing on the MEAC tournament, but I just don't see a team. This is essentially what it should have looked like when Norfolk State had Shanette Hicks, unfortunately the MEAC tournament got shut down because of the vid. But this is their year. This is just their year. They have the undisputed 2 best players in arguably HBCU women's basketball. Like, I know Zay Green has a debate for being in that discussion, but I don't know. I just think that this is Norfolk State's year, and I don't think they are going to be denied.
Heard it first. Norfolk State is going to go to the tournament unscathed the rest of the season. Jared Hoffman.
Whoa, hey, whoa. Putting a little bit too much dip on your chip. I don't know. I don't know if I won't be saying that yet, But
you predicted football teams going like winless throughout the season. Hey man, why not go on a limb on this one?
hey, I had a reason to go out on a limb on that one. I don't know about this yet. Anything can happen going down the stretch, but they definitely look like that team that could go through it unscathed. They look like it.
That's staying with the MEAC, going to the men's side now. It's Norfolk State who's in first place on the men's side, but behind them, they got North Carolina Central, Howard, and Morgan State all at 5-3, and Delaware State, your school, Chris, just a game and a half out of first place, with South Carolina State right there with them to round out the top 6. Of that group, Chris, who do you see being the cream of the crop, as the Macho Man Randy Savage once famously said?
I am the cream. Yeah. Well, I have to say that anybody in the top 3 wouldn't surprise me. That includes Norfolk State, North Carolina Central, or Howard. Anything, honestly, anything outside of those 3 would shock me. And this is coming from somebody who is begging, pleading for Delaware State to complete this massive turnaround after not winning 10 games in a season since 2017 and before this year. Central has one of the more unique 3-guard lineups and led by one of the great names in all of sports, period. Po' Boy King. I love that name. Every time I hear his name on television, I'm like, go get him, Po' Boy. That is one of the great names. I would love to know how his name came to be, because that is just phenomenal. Is that his nickname? Is that his government name? Did his mama name him that? Did his father name him that? Did an aunt? Did an uncle? I need to know about Po' Boy King, man. But overall, he's on the court. He's averaging about 13 points a game. So it's not just it's his name and his game. And Lavelle Moulton, he's been down this road several times before. He knows what it takes to win the MEAC. He's no stranger to this thing. Robert Jones either, and neither is Coach Blakeney. So I feel like those 3 have the inside track. But if you had to make me pick today, I still feel like Norfolk State, for everything that they've gone through, including the shenanigans at Illinois State, and they're still, they're 7-1. They're 7-1 in conference at this point. They're still the ones to beat. So I feel like Norfolk State, has the inside edge, but it really wouldn't surprise me if Central or Howard beat them.
Yeah, same thing here. Like, I think it's a 3-way race between Howard, defending conference champ, Morgan State, always a solid team, then North Carolina Central, led by Lavelle Moulton. They're always in it. They're never going to quit. They're never going to die. But for my
Uh-oh. I think Kendrick went out on us. Okay, so while we wait for Kendrick to come back.
Yeah. I'll just go ahead and jump in.
Oh, yeah, I'm back. Oh, I got cut off. So,
all right.
I was gonna say, like, Norfolk State having to deal with the racism at Illinois State and having to overcome that, and just being solid and consistent throughout the season. I think they're gonna pull out the MEAC, at least in the regular season this year. They've been perennial MEAC champions for a while, and so I don't think that kind of changes this year either. Going to the SWAC side for women, Jackson State 12-0 so far on the women's side. They've just gotten better as the season has gone on, especially in SWAC play. They got a little scared from Southern. They had to battle back in the second half and pull out a game. Other than that, they haven't been challenged in conference play. Chris, is there any team in the SWAC that could possibly knock off Tamika Reed's Jackson State Tigers?
And I will still bang the drum for Zay Green and Arkansas Pine Bluff. I just feel like they still have what it takes to challenge that team. I think what Tamika Reed is done at, am I saying her name right?
That's right, yeah.
Tamika.
Yeah. I think the IA is throwing me over. Yes, Tamika Reed. What she's doing, and they lost, and Jackson lost one of their key players to an ACL injury in the middle of the season. So to lose one of their starters and still be unbeaten in SWAC this late in the season just tells you that Tamika Reed is a damn good coach. And it's one of those things where you want to see her build this program up to be a mid-major power. But if people like Kim Mulkey keep inserting themselves like she did that one year after they met in the NCAA tournament, another school is going to notice her. I mean, schools have probably noticed her already, for crying out loud. mean, she's done a wonderful job. But I just feel like, Zay Green and and the talent that Dawn Thornton has at Pine Bluff can, make things difficult for Jackson State. It really all depends on how the SWAC bracket shakes out, because I know Grambly's still very much up there. Texas Southern has a couple of things to say about it. So it'll be interesting to see, once the SWAC tournament starts. But right now, it's really Jackson State and everybody else.
I know at halftime before we came on the show, Jackson State was trailing Bethune-Cookman by a point. I don't know what the updated score is on that one, but it's safe to say I think Jackson State's going to make a rally in that one. But yeah, Jared, how do you handicap the SWAC on the women's side?
Well, as dominant as Jackson State looks, and look, they look dominant. They are winning by an average of 20 points per game. So it ain't no question that they've been dominant. But we went through this last year. They were undefeated going into the tournament last year, and they got knocked out in the semifinals. So I'm not going to count out a UAPB team that now has Zay Green and is winning their conference games by just under 13 points per game. I can't count them out. Maori Davenport as well. I can't count them out. And then you got Florida A&M, who has a player who is gone completely crazy, just scoring insanely, in the past month. So I can't say that, I mean, obviously Jackson State is the clear favorite. They've been the best team even without Daphne White after her ACL injury, but they're the most talented as of right now, and they look the best right now. So I'd say that they're the betting favorite going into down the stretch of the regular season and into the tournament.
Yeah, Jackson State was able to pull out a 52-39 win tonight over Bethune-Cookman to go to 13-0. Just continue to roll on. Angel Jackson led the way for the Tigers with 10.6 rebounds. Yeah, I mean, it seems like they're going to go undefeated in the regular season again, unless a catastrophe happens. So let's just suffer another injury. They just been the cream of the crop in the SWAC, but like SWAC tournament play, unpredictable. As Jared mentioned, they lost in the semifinal last year to Southern, so you never know. Again, Southern is another strong team in the conference outside Pine Bluff, as we mentioned before. Also very good with Zay Green. And I hated that when those two teams played last week, that Zay Green wasn't out there to really test to see where Pine Bluff kind of matched up with Jackson State, having their full complement of players out there. But they'll get another shot at later in the year, and we'll see that great matchup. Now on the SWAC men's side, once again, Texas Southern is making their annual run through the conference after getting off to a slow start in conference play. Grambling State is also in contention. Southern is the top of the standings. Jackson State got off to a really good start. They kind of tapered off a little bit. Chris, how do you kind of handicap the SWAC men as we approach the end of the conference play season for SWAC men's basketball?
I think it's really much in line, with the MEAC. You can pick any three out of the hat between Texas Southern, and Grambling and not be surprised. Texas Southern, they just have this knack for pulling it together late in the season. I don't know if, they just, if they're playing possum or, the slow starts is just who they are. But Texas Southern feels like, they're destined for, unfortunately, again, Dayton, Ohio in the first four. But, it wouldn't surprise me, if Southern was able to, hold on to this lead and, finish the whole thing out. But right now, my pick is Texas Southern.
Okay, Jared, what say you about SWAC men's basketball? Is it Southern's to lose, or is it going to be unpredictable down the stretch?
Look, Texas Southern was the 8th seed in last year's tournament and completely shocked everybody. I don't know why we should have been shocked, because they've been the kings of the SWAC in the previous years, and they've had a system of winning for a culture of winning, for a long time. So I don't know why we feel the need to worry about them having the slow start. Like that, they are to me like LeBron. in a sense of when the games really matter, when it's win or go home, and you need a win to stay alive. I trust them more than any other team. So as well as Southern is playing, as well as Grambling's playing, I can't count out Texas Southern. So they're my favorite until proven otherwise.
Yeah, Jared, I'm right there with you, man. Like Texas Southern, they always seem to make their run like they did last year. No one expected them to do anything in the tournament. End up winning, and they end up winning the whole thing. So I mean, like the SWAC standings are kind of like bunched up. A lot of teams in contention for the regular season championship. So we'll see how it kind of goes on down the stretch. And moving on to like the smaller conferences outside of the SWAC, I know, Jerry, you recently wrote about, despite their loss, Clark Atlanta, they had won, 12 straight games before they lost? 13 straight games before they lost last week. And out of the, so do you foresee like Clark Atlanta making a run for the tournament at the Division II level this year?
Absolutely. And it's remarkable the turnaround that Clark Atlanta has had. You know, they had 3 straight seasons where they had a losing record, and now they're 21-4. They were 8-20 last season. Now they're 21-4 this season. They had a 13-game win streak. They had a win streak with more wins than they had all of last season. So that their turnaround is not talked about enough. And I definitely think that they have been the best team in the SIAC, and they are definitely a team that is currently the favorite to win the conference. I'm curious to see how they play when in those pressurized moments. We just talked about Texas Southern. When the lights are bright, when your season is on the line, how do you handle that pressure? Can Clark Atlantic answer that call? I think they are talented enough to do it, but any team with talent can go down at any moment. So we'll see how they perform, but I think they're definitely good enough to do it.
Yeah, talking about a team like Jerry said, won only 8 games last year, and it's all new territory for them being this good for so long. So I'll be curious to see like how they do, like when conference tournament time comes. Like, would they be able to rise to the occasion? Would they be able to kind of continue their great play this season? Chris, like, how do you handicap the SIAC and whether or not Clark Atlanta can continue this good run they're on?
Honestly, I think what makes the SIAC as a conference beautiful is there's just so much depth that you can literally look at. There are more than half of the conference is above 500 right now. Miles is leading the West. Tuskegee's not that far behind them. I guess Spring Hill is not an HBCU, but they're there. So, I guess we got to count them. Allen just beat Benedict the other day. So you really have to game plan for everybody in a 13-team conference. So you might think that, Clark Atlanta or Morehouse can hold off Allen, or, you don't expect much from, Edward Waters or Tuskegee, but you never know. It's just one of those conferences where no matter the sport, you have to show up every night or you're going to get shot. And I think that's what makes the SIAC, probably. I said they were the best black college conference in football last year. I'll make an argument for them in basketball as well.
Wow. Now y'all going on some big limbs tonight, man. Like, so you're saying the SIAC is the best black college basketball conference?
Well, when you look, just look at the depth. You can't rely on the MEAC for depth because there's only 8 teams, and 6 of those, 2 of those are pretty already much been eliminated, for crying out loud. Coppin is, it's going to take a while for Larry Stewart, who of course was a program legend, played for what was then the Washington Bullets. It's going to take a while for him to, build that program up. The SWAC, it gets real clustery after that top 3 or 4. So, and the CIAA, you can make an argument for the CIAA as well, because it's always, they have the greatest tournament in the world. And, you never know what you're going to get when those teams meet in Baltimore in the last weekend of March. So, but right now, the SIAC, they just have, they have the talent. They have the teams that, are winning right now. And I just like, whenever I can catch an SIAC game, I'm always heavily invested. And that's what you want. If you're a Black college sports fan, you want to be heavily invested in what's going on. And I find the SIAC gives you more bang for your buck in that regard.
I guess what Chris is saying, we need to watch more SIAC sports like football, basketball, baseball, softball, whatever it is.
I second that for sure.
Yeah.
Hopefully they add lacrosse. Can't wait to talk about that. Oh my God, yes.
Yes. A great segue by Chris. Our last topic for the night is to talk about lacrosse. Chris, you wrote about an historic Division II meeting happening across between University of DC and Virginia State. They met in men's and women's lacrosse this past weekend. What did you take away from that experience?
Well, I probably was the only HBCU media sports member to watch that on stream. Yes, I'm tooting my own horn with that, toot big beat. But what I liked about that, because we're still in the throes of cold season in the Mid-Atlantic region, and I mean, I know Virginia, obviously, because of that war thing, that the folks that like them stars and bars can't get over the fact they lost 140 some years ago. Virginia's considered the South, but it's still cold. But what I saw on that stream was people in gooses, triple gooses, and pea coats and all of that, cheering for Virginia State and UDC men's and women's lacrosse. Like I heard the chant after Virginia State goalie stopped like 3 or 4 shots in a row. She's a brick wall. She's a brick wall. And whenever the referees would pull out the card, you'd hear one side say, "You can't do that." You need that type of enthusiasm from your student body if you're going to have any sort of traction in these sports that aren't football, that aren't basketball. And I found it interesting because Coach John Ruffin of UDC said this would be a good way to show students that you can have that play those sports, that you can still go to an HBCU. Because right now we have, I want to say 5 NCAA lacrosse programs. You got Delaware State women, Howard women, and Hampton men in Division I. And now you have Virginia State and UDC in Division II. So yes, there's still a lot to, get traction in that sport. But I feel like lacrosse is a sport everyone should at least try to watch at least one time. Because when I was a young reporter, I moved to St. Mary's County, Maryland in, the mid to late 2000s, and I'll never go back. Like if you paid me $1 million, I wouldn't go back to St. Mary's County, Maryland. Can't wait to write my memoir about that experience. But anyway, I found out that lacrosse, Marylanders take it very seriously, and it's a very exciting sport. It's basically football and hockey combined on grass. And if you can, match that combine that physicality, that speed, that skill level, it's a fun sport to watch. And to see young Black kids playing lacrosse and being cheered on, it was dope. And I really hope that Virginia State and UDC continue the momentum, and hopefully some other schools can look at this and say, hey, maybe we should start a lacrosse program, and we'll see where it goes from there. So I feel like, we on the HBCU sports level, we're investing in football and basketball because those are, as we like to say, the front porch of your university. Those are your money makers. But you still need to have a house that's clean overall. And if we can get more sports, niche sports, like we got Tennessee State adding ice hockey. We've had the SIAC add men's volleyball. Now we have, a couple of HBCUs adding lacrosse. If we can do more of those things, because Black kids are not a monolith. We've never been a monolith, honestly. But now that these Black kids are open about, they like to play lacrosse. They like to play ice hockey. I did a story about the Howard University Skate Club, and now there's skate clubs cropping up all over HBCUs after that story pop. So, the more that we give, Black kids that aren't, I guess we'll call them alt Black kids. If we can get more of those kids to HBCUs and play those sports, the better our universities will be. And I feel like lacrosse is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, talking about lacrosse, the greatest lacrosse player ever is considered to be Jim Brown.
Mm-hmm.
He played across at Syracuse. So yeah, like we do lacrosse, we do gymnastics. I know Wilberforce University announced they're going to start a gymnastics program coming up in 2026. Fisk already has a gymnastics program. They've done wonderful things so far in their short time having that program. So yeah, like Black colleges are like venturing out to new territories and different avenues. Just not only try to attract different kinds of students, but just kind of like fortify the university too. Like give students like different options for sports instead of like traditional ones that we all come to know and love. But ladies and gentlemen, tonight that's our show. That's Chris Stevens. I'm Kendrick for Jared Hoffman. Thanks for watching. But before you go, be sure to visit our website, hbcusports.com, and donate to our website at hbcusports.com/donate. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X. Subscribe, like this YouTube channel to get more videos like this. And we will see you next time.